Hi, this is Norton Pease. I'm exhibiting recent work which is up at the Averitt Center for the Arts now through June 29th. I'm an artist, a professor of art in the Betty Foy Sanders Department of Art, and Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities at Georgia Southern University. This recent project has its origin stemming back to my MFA thesis in 1999 from Washington University in St. Louis, whereby as a person of privilege, I have been exploring white privilege for a little over 20 years. So this painting is Groundhog Day, Privilege, Scratched, and Version. It's a triptych, and each panel has its own unique titles. So Privilege is on the left, Scratch is in the middle, because I've used sandpaper to scratch away the paint, and Inversion is on the right, which is an inverted self-portrait. It's done as acrylic on vinyl, and this is for the first time I've painted in acrylics, as I can't put oil on vinyl, it just doesn't dry. And it's also very large. It's 85 by 184 inches. The background image is that of the McKinley pool party incident from 2015, and it is in many ways a prime example of police violence against people of color, and I use that as really conceptually as part of the overall theme as it correlates with the title, that being Groundhog Day, where these instances are occurring at such a rate where it feels like every day is repeating itself, very much like the movie or the time loop there is of every day continuing. And at the very end, I'm alluding to a break in the cycle with the self-portrait, but obviously it still does continue. But in this particular painting, I also broke apart that background image and abstracted it with these Ben-Day dots. These Ben-Day dots allow you to be able to view it up close as a complete abstraction, and you get further away from the particular work or the painting, you'll see it as figuration, and those colors tend to kind of formulate and blend together. I just wanted to not focus on that background image as spectacle, rather, again, incorporate it as it relates to the content of the work. This painting is titled Right to Left, Left to Right. It's acrylic, spray paint, oil, and archival print on canvas, and it was completed on Halloween of 2020. It's 53 by 90 inches, and visually, this does move from the right to left and back from the left to the right, but also it mirrors the process in which it was created. And you really can see that final gesture or pour in the right side. You can see, well, if you look at the rainbow colors, those are all done in oil. I took turpentine and just poured it directly over that, and kind of a long drawn out pour to break down that particular paint, and that flows directly over Pepe's head. Pepe the Frog is a image and symbol that has been embraced by white supremacists, and he's pointing into the composition and to the center of the image at Kyle Rittenhouse. So that halftone abstraction that really is the center part of this particular painting is of Kyle after he shot and killed two individuals in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Actually, several individuals, I should say. And as he's approaching the police in a very true white privilege moment, they let him go. And I was thinking about their perceptions of him as he was approaching them, and his perceptions as well. And I was also thinking about the polarization of our country. I was thinking about it in terms of one side or another as we moved up to the election, where everything is right and left. And true to, I also incorporated the colonizing imagery from these children's books and kind of repeated them so that they felt like a marching unit, kind of alluding to the alt-right fringe groups. This painting is titled Prism. It's acrylic, spray paint, and archival print on canvas from 2020. It was 57 by 91 inches. And I titled it Prism because in many ways I was thinking about color processes, but specifically in this case, refraction, and I was viewing prism as a metaphor for white privilege. I used the Dick and Jane imagery that's in the upper left-hand corner. That's inverted. It's actually Jack and Jill, where Jack is now jumping out and hovering over Charles Kinsey, who is in the background image below. And Charles Kinsey, this is footage, by the way, of a North Miami shooting that took place in 2016. Charles Kinsey was a mental health therapist, and he was trying to assist in getting his patient back, who is autistic and nonverbal, who was holding a toy truck. This is a young adult, and police were there on the scene because they thought that an individual was suicidal, and they thought that he was potentially a danger to Kinsey. Even though Charles Kinsey was pleading with the police, negotiating and saying, we're not a threat to the community, he's not, trying to explain who he was still shot in the leg. And so this juxtaposition of the colonizing imagery over that, I think, is really kind of an important aspect to this particular painting. But true too is the fact that I had to abstract that imagery because, again, I did not want to glorify that. And in fact, you may still struggle in finding the figuration that is there, especially up close you will, because it's so abstracted, but as you stand further back, you should get perspective and be able to see that. This painting is titled Prism 2. It's acrylic, pastel, Band-Aid, and ink on paper from 2020, and it's the smallest of the works in the gallery. It's 33 by 25 inches. The imagery that I'm using in this work correlates with Prism. You know, I have the Dick and Jane, Jack and Jill. It's a little bit more clear here because it's not inverted as it is in Prism. But I'm expanding that into things like comic books like Fat Albert. And these are part of the educational material that formalized my understanding of the world at a young age. I'm also surrounding the entire imagery with the flesh color that I assumed was a bandage from memory. And I was able to then get the bandage itself about 7 days after mixing that color from the container that is in Prism. So I just painted that color all the way around the overall composition, and then I use pastel lines. That's a dry pigment, and the paint itself picks up that dry pigment. So I was able to match the hue of the bandage in that last gesture in the upper left-hand corner. That's a spot where, again, I put the bandage itself. So there are two paintings in this gallery that are individual, but they do appear as they're working as a unit or a diptych because one is on top of the other. The first one is Cyan, Magenta, Yellow, Black, or CMYK from 2020. It's 26 by 40 inches, and it's acrylic and ink on archival paper. This particular image is using the 1965 illustration. In fact, both of them are using this, the exact same imagery, but the backdrops are a little bit different. So that stretched imagery that comes in enters a different space, and that space is the Ben Dad news footage imagery from the Unite the Right rally in the Market Street Park in Charlottesville, Virginia from 2017. If you stand further back, you'll be able to see that a little bit more clearly. In fact, between the two stretched figures, you'll see the equestrian statue of Robert E. Lee, and then down below are all the torchbearers, the white supremacist torchbearers. That same imagery finds its way in our red, green, and blue, or RGB, and you'll note that the backdrop image is a little bit different and a lot darker, as you note that from the upper right-hand corner, all of those torchbearers go moving down to the lower left. In fact, one of the torchbearers is looking directly up at the children. So I wanted to have that connection, interplay between the two. And again, that's only can be viewed from a distance to be able to recognize and identify that as a form and a figure that is looking up. You know, for me, bringing this imagery into this type of situation kind of plays into that idea, that coming of age moment where the world is not as safe as you thought it would be. And you know, we are using imagery that has a sense of innocence to it, but I would argue it doesn't in the fact that I find these two elements are truly conjoined, not only in terms of proximity, but in their place of white privilege. So this painting is titled Humanity 2. It's acrylic and ink on archival paper from 2020, and it's 36 by 60 inches. So as much as I was thinking about color in all the other works, this work is a reflective work, both literally as well as conceptually. So because it's a work on paper, it's in a frame with a plexiglass front, and I wanted to create a reflective property to it. So adding that large, dark, black form really does create that. And I was thinking about Maya Lin's Vietnam Memorial with the high polished black granite as that really does, you can't help but be aware of your own presence and looking at the names of the memorial because it's so reflective. So true too, I wanted to have that quality within this particular painting. It plays up on the idea of humanity or the human race, with the broken background image of the Walter Scott murder in North Charleston, South Carolina. But again, the primary focus on this particular painting, and really the majority of the work, is that black area that is covering over the police officer, and more importantly, bringing you, the viewer, into the composition. Thank you. If you've made it this far, you've listened to it all, that's commendable. But I do hope that if you're able to make it to the exhibition, you do, as seeing these works via the web or any social media platform that you're viewing this on, you just it's a different conversation altogether than being able to be in presence with the work itself. That's just the nature of art. So if you have a chance, it's open through the 29th of June, and enjoy. I'm hoping that it stimulates further conversation and dialogue as it relates to privilege.